The scent hit me first, earthy, wild, with undertones of pine and something else. Something primal that made the hair on my arms stand on end. My eyes refused to open immediately, heavy with exhaustion, but my other senses compensated with alarming clarity. Rough furs pressed against my skin. The distant sound of rain pattering against what I imagined was a wooden roof. Cold air carrying whispers in a language I couldn't quite grasp. I was supposed to be dead. The accident on the mountain road should have been fatal. My car sliding on black ice, plummeting over the guardrail, tumbling down the ravine as I screamed into the darkness. I remembered the impact, the shattering glass, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth. Yet here I was, breathing, alive, in a place that smelled nothing like a hospital. I forced my eyelids open, blinking against the dim light of what appeared to be a rustic cabin. Wooden beams stretched overhead, rough-hewn and ancient. A fire crackled in a stone hearth nearby, casting flickering shadows across the walls. But it was what surrounded my makeshift bed that froze the breath in my lungs. Wolves. Massive, imposing creatures with thick fur in shades of gray, black, and russet brown. Some dozed near the hearth, while others watched me with intelligent eyes that reflected the firelight. They weren't behaving like wild animals. There was something almost human in their regard. I clutched the furs closer to my body, realizing I wore only a loose linen shift that wasn't mine. My grandmother's silver pendant still hung around my neck, the only familiar thing in this unfamiliar place. I touched it reflexively, drawing comfort from the worn metal as I had since childhood. "She's awake," a female voice said from the shadows. A slender woman with copper hair emerged, carrying a wooden cup. Unlike the formal tone of her words, her eyes held curiosity rather than hostility. She wore simple clothes, leather pants and a woven tunic that looked handmade but sturdy. "Where am I?" My voice emerged as a rasp, my throat parched. "How did I get here?" She approached cautiously, as if I were the dangerous one, and offered the cup. "Drink. It will help with the pain you don't yet feel." I hesitated, but thirst overrode caution. The liquid was bitter yet sweet, herbal with a hint of honey. It warmed me from within, and only then did I become aware of the dull ache permeating my body. "You're in Blackcrest territory," she said, taking the empty cup. "They found you half frozen in the ravine 3 nights ago. No one expected you to survive." 3 nights? I struggled to sit upright, ignoring the protest of sore muscles. "I need to call my sister. She'll be worried sick. Do you have a phone I could use?" A strange look crossed the woman's face. "There are no phones here." Before I could question this absurdity, the cabin door swung open, sending a blast of cold air through the room. The wolves, all of them, lifted their heads in unison. Some rose to their feet, tails lowered respectfully. The man who entered filled the doorframe with his presence more than his physical size, though he was certainly tall and broad-shouldered. Rain darkened his black hair, which was pulled back from a face that seemed carved from stone, all sharp angles and uncompromising lines. His eyes, however, struck me the most. Amber, almost golden in the firelight, with an intensity that seemed to pierce through pretense. He shrugged off a soaked leather coat, revealing a body hardened by physical labor or combat rather than a gym. Scars marked his forearms, not the kind from accidents, but from violence. When those amber eyes landed on me, something shifted in their depths. Recognition, relief, and something darker I couldn't name. The room had gone utterly silent. "You shouldn't be sitting up," he said, his voice deep and commanding, yet oddly gentle. "Your ribs are bruised, possibly cracked." "Who are you people?" I demanded, fighting the instinct to shrink back. "And why are there wolves just lounging around like house pets?" A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Maya," he addressed the copper-haired woman without taking his eyes off me. "Give us the room." She nodded and left without question. The wolves, however, remained. "My name is Ronan," he said, approaching slowly. "I'm the alpha of the Blackcrest pack, and they're not pets. They're family." I stared at him, waiting for the punchline to this bizarre joke. When none came, I laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Right. And I suppose next you'll tell me they're werewolves?" His expression remained impassive. "We prefer shifters." The earnestness in his tone sent a chill down my spine. I'd been rescued by a man who was clearly delusional, possibly dangerous. I needed to leave, to find help, to get back to civilization. "Thank you for helping me," I said carefully. "But I need to go home now. My sister—" "Elise is fine," he cut in, speaking my sister's name with familiar ease. "I sent word that you're safe." Ice flooded my veins. "How do you know my sister's name?" Ronan crouched beside my makeshift bed, close enough that I could see flecks of deeper gold in his eyes, close enough that his scent, rain, woods, and something uniquely him, enveloped me. One of the wolves, a massive silver-gray creature, padded over and settled at his side. "I know more than her name, Charlotte," he said, my own name falling from his lips like he'd spoken it 1,000 times before. "I know you were born during the winter solstice 27 years ago. I know you have a scar on your right knee from falling out of an apple tree when you were 9. I know your grandmother gave you that pendant before she died." My hand clutched the pendant protectively. "Have you been stalking me?" "No," he said, his gaze never wavering. "I've been waiting for you to remember." "Remember what?" I whispered, though some deep, primal part of me already knew, or feared, the answer. "Who you are. Who we are to each other." He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed his fingertips along my cheek. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through me, accompanied by a flash of something. A memory. A dream. His voice came softer now. "You were never meant to be in that world, Charlotte. You belong here." I jerked away from his touch. "I don't know you." Pain flickered across his features before his expression hardened again. "You did once. And you will again." "This is insane," I said, struggling to my feet despite the protest of my battered body. "I need to leave. Now." Ronan rose with me, steady and patient as I swayed. "You're in no condition to travel. And even if you were, a storm is coming. No one leaves the mountain until it passes." As if on cue, thunder rumbled in the distance, and the rain intensified, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. The wolves watched our exchange with 2 knowing eyes. "Then find me somewhere else to stay," I demanded. "Somewhere normal. Without—" I gestured at the wolves. Something dangerous flashed in Ronan's eyes. "This is my territory, my pack, my home." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near growl. "And whether you remember it yet or not, Charlotte, it's yours too." A memory surfaced then, fragmentary and hazy, snow falling softly through trees. A boy with amber eyes holding out his hand to me, a promise whispered in the darkness. I shook my head, dispelling the image. It wasn't real. Couldn't be real. "You're confused from the accident," he continued, more gently now. "Rest, eat. When you're stronger, Maya will show you around. You'll see that this place is not as strange as it first appears. And if I still want to leave," his expression remained unreadable, "then I won't stop you." Something in his tone suggested he didn't believe that would happen, that he knew something I didn't. It should have frightened me more than it did. I sank back onto the furs, suddenly exhausted. "Where will you be?" A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Never far." He turned to leave, the silver wolf following at his heels, but paused at the door. "The pendant," he said without turning. "Do you know what the symbols mean?" I glanced down at the silver disc with its strange etchings, spirals, and what appeared to be a stylized wolf with its head thrown back in a silent howl. My grandmother said it was a family heirloom, that it would protect me. Ronan nodded once. She wasn't wrong. Then he was gone, leaving me with more questions than answers. The remaining wolves settled around the room, seemingly content to watch over me. One smaller wolf with unusual silver-tipped fur approached cautiously, then curled up near my feet. Despite everything, I found its presence oddly comforting. Sleep tugged at me again, the herbal drink and my injuries conspiring to drag me back into unconsciousness. As my eyes grew heavy, I thought I heard whispering, voices discussing me as if I weren't there. She doesn't remember anything. Give her time. The bond is already pulling her back. And if she rejects it, rejects him, Then may the gods have mercy on us all. I tried to focus, to make sense of their words, but exhaustion claimed me before I could. My dreams were filled with wolves running through moonlit forests, and a boy with amber eyes who grew into the man who had just left, a man who looked at me like I was something precious he'd lost and found again. When I woke next, weak sunlight filtered through small windows, suggesting it was morning. The wolves were gone, save for the silver-tipped one at my feet. In their place sat Maya, grinding herbs in a stone mortar. "The storm broke at dawn," she said without looking up, "but the paths will be treacherous for days." I pushed myself up, noting with surprise that the pain had lessened considerably. "What was in that drink you gave me?" "Old remedies. Stronger than what you're used to." She set aside her work and studied me. "You really don't remember anything, do you?" "There's nothing to remember," I insisted, though the dream lingered at the edges of my consciousness. "I've never been here before." Maya's expression softened with something like pity. "That's not true, Charlotte. You were born here." The certainty in her voice unsettled me. "That's impossible. I grew up in Ashridge with my parents and sister." "With your mother and sister," she corrected. "After your mother took you away, my head throbbed with the beginnings of a headache. My father died when I was a baby." "Is that what she told you?" Maya rose and brought me another cup of the herbal mixture. "Your father is very much alive. He's the pack's eldest council member." I took the cup, but didn't drink. "This is crazy. All of it." "Drink," she urged. "Then we'll talk more." The liquid was warm and soothing, clearing my mind rather than clouding it. Outside, I could hear voices, the sounds of a community going about their day despite the aftermath of the storm. How many? I hesitated, not wanting to validate their delusion, yet curious despite myself. "How many people live here?" 43 in the immediate pack, Maya replied. "Another 100 or so in the extended territory. And they're all shifters." She nodded. "Most born to it, a few who join by mating with pack members." I set the empty cup aside. "And Ronan? He's your..." "What? Leader?" Something like amusement flashed in Maya's eyes. "He is our alpha, our king, if you prefer that term. He guides us, protects us, makes the hard decisions when needed." "He seems to think he knows me." "He does know you," Maya said simply. "Better than anyone." Before I could press her further, the door opened, and a tall man with gray-streaked dark hair entered. He froze when he saw me, his weathered face paling as if he'd seen a ghost. "Charlotte," he whispered, and the way he said my name, like a prayer, like a blessing, made my heart constrict. Maya stood. "I'll give you some privacy." As she slipped past him, the older man continued to stare at me, his eyes, a familiar shade of blue that I saw in the mirror every day, filling with tears. "My daughter," he said, his voice breaking on the words. "You've finally come home. I'm not your daughter." The words came out harsher than I intended, but the intensity of the man's emotion unnerved me. "I don't know you." Pain flashed across his weathered face, but he nodded as if he'd expected this reaction. "Your mother said you might not remember. That she'd done what she could to protect you from the memories." He remained by the door, giving me space, though I could see the effort it cost him not to approach. His shoulders were broad like Ronan's, but time had bent them slightly. The silver streaking his dark hair suggested he was in his 50s, though something about his bearing made him seem both older and younger simultaneously. "My name is Daniel," he said. "I held you minutes after you were born. You had a birthmark shaped like a crescent moon on your left shoulder. You were tiny, but strong. You grabbed my finger and wouldn't let go." My hand unconsciously moved to my left shoulder where, beneath the thin fabric, lay exactly such a birthmark. A coincidence. It had to be. Or he'd seen me unconscious, checked while I was vulnerable. "My father died in a car accident when I was an infant," I insisted, repeating what my mother had told me throughout my childhood. "His name was James." Daniel's mouth twisted in a sad smile. "James was your mother's brother. She used his identity to create a new life for you both." He finally moved, taking a tentative step toward me. "May I?" I hesitated, then nodded, watching warily as he approached and lowered himself onto a wooden stool near my bed. Up close, the resemblance between us was undeniable. The same blue eyes, the same stubborn set to the jaw, even the same slight dimple in the left cheek when he offered a cautious smile. "Your mother, Vivian, was not from our world," he continued. "She came here as a researcher, studying what she thought were simply wolves with unusual behaviors. We fell in love. When she learned what we truly were, she embraced our ways." His eyes clouded with memory. "But after you were born, there was an attack by a rival pack. You were nearly taken. The fear, it broke something in her. She fled with you during the chaos, took you to her world." I shook my head, trying to deny the seed of doubt now planted in my mind. "That's not possible. I would remember something." "You were 3 years old," Daniel said gently, "and Vivian was determined that you forget, that you never find your way back here." "Then why would she keep this?" I touched the pendant at my neck. "If she wanted me to forget, because despite everything, she couldn't bring herself to sever all ties. That pendant has been passed down through my family for generations. It marks you as part of the pack, protects you from those who might do you harm." He leaned forward, his eyes intense. "Have you never wondered why you feel most alive in forests? Why you're drawn to the moon? Why no relationship has ever felt complete?" I flinched, his words hitting too close to home. My lifelong fascination with wolves that I'd channeled into wildlife photography, my preference for night over day. The string of failed relationships, because something always felt missing, some essential connection I couldn't name. "This is insane," I whispered, but with less conviction than before. Daniel reached into his pocket and withdrew a folded photograph, yellowed with age. "This was taken the day before you disappeared." With trembling fingers, I accepted it. The image showed a younger Daniel holding a small, fair-haired child on his shoulders. The girl, me, was laughing, her tiny hands fisted in his hair. Behind them stood a beautiful woman I recognized as my mother, 20 years younger, her expression a complex mixture of love and worry. "That can't be real," I said. But staring at the photo, memories stirred. Fragmentary impressions of being carried on strong shoulders, of laughter echoing through trees, of feeling safe and cherished. "Your mother contacted me 6 months ago," Daniel said quietly, "for the first time in 24 years. She was ill, cancer. She wanted to make things right before she passed." My head snapped up. "My mother died of cancer 3 months ago." Daniel nodded, sorrow etching deeper lines into his face. "I know. She asked me to give you time to grieve before reaching out. But then," he gestured vaguely, "the accident. Somehow you found your way back to us on your own. That's why Ronan knew about my sister, my grandmother. Elise is your half-sister. Vivian had her with the man she eventually married. But your grandmother, my mother, she always held out hope you would return. Before she died, she made me promise to give you her pendant if you ever did." His smile turned bittersweet. "Vivian beat me to it, it seems." The world tilted on its axis. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my very identity, unraveled with each word, yet something deep within me resonated with the truth of his claims. The pendant that had always felt like more than mere jewelry, the inexplicable comfort I found in the howl of distant wolves. The strange dreams that had plagued me since childhood, dreams of running through moonlit forests, on 4 legs instead of 2. "Ronan said I was claimed," I said after a long silence. "What did he mean by that?" Daniel's expression grew guarded. "That is a conversation best had with him. I'm asking you." He sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "When you were born, there was a prophecy." A sharp knock interrupted him as the door swung open. A young man with tawny hair rushed in, his expression urgent. "Elder Daniel, you're needed at the north boundary. Trackers found signs of Red Claw scouts." Daniel rose immediately, his demeanor shifting from emotional father to commanding presence. "Tell Ronan I'll meet him there." He turned to me, conflict evident in his eyes. "I must go. We'll continue this later." "Wait," I called as he headed for the door. "You can't just drop all of this on me and leave." He paused, then returned to press a kiss to my forehead, the gesture so achingly familiar that tears sprang to my eyes. "Rest, daughter. Regain your strength. There will be time for all your questions." After he left, I sat in stunned silence, the photograph still clutched in my hands. The woman Maya had mentioned that the storm had broken, but I felt as though a different kind of storm was just beginning inside me. I forced myself to stand, testing my strength. The pain had receded to a dull ache, surprising for injuries that should have taken weeks to heal. The cabin was simply furnished but comfortable. A table with carved chairs, shelves lined with jars of herbs and strange artifacts, furs and woven blankets providing warmth against the mountain chill. Near the hearth lay a pile of clean clothes, practical garments similar to what Maya had worn. I changed quickly, grateful to be rid of the thin shift. The soft leather pants and woven tunic fit surprisingly well, as did the boots I found nearby. Wrapped in a warm shawl, I felt steady enough to venture outside. The silver-tipped wolf that had stayed by my side rose with me, watching attentively, but making no move to stop me. When I reached for the door, it patted ahead as if to lead the way. "You're not going to bite me if I try to leave, are you?" I asked, feeling only slightly foolish for addressing it directly. The wolf made a sound suspiciously like a snort and nudged the door with its nose. Stepping outside, I caught my breath at the view that greeted me. The cabin stood at the edge of what appeared to be a small village, nestled in a valley surrounded by towering pines and rugged mountain peaks. Other structures, some cabins like mine, others larger buildings, formed a rough circle around a central clearing. People moved about with purpose, carrying items, speaking in groups, tending to tasks. But what struck me most was that they seemed to shift between forms with casual ease. A woman hanging laundry on a line would suddenly be a russet-colored wolf, shaking out a blanket with her teeth. Children played tag, some on 2 legs, others on 4, shifting back and forth as the game demanded. The boundary between human and animal blurred before my eyes, challenging everything I thought I knew about reality. "It takes some getting used to," came a voice beside me. I turned to find a young woman with honey-blonde hair and kind eyes. She appeared to be about my age, dressed similarly to me but with intricate beaded bracelets adorning her wrists. The silver-tipped wolf sat at her feet, looking between us expectantly. "I'm Nora," she said, offering a hand. "And this troublemaker is Willow." As she spoke, the wolf shimmered. There was no other word for it, and in its place stood a girl of perhaps 16, with the same silver-tipped hair as the wolf's fur. She grinned at my shocked expression. "Sorry for staring," Willow said, not sounding sorry at all. "But you're her, the one he's been waiting for." Nora shot the younger girl a warning look. "Go help with the midday meal, and not a word to anyone that she's up and about. Ronan wanted to introduce her himself." Willow rolled her eyes but complied, jogging toward what appeared to be a communal kitchen area. "Teenagers," Nora said with a fond shake of her head. "Wolf or human, they're all the same." I found myself oddly comfortable in her presence, despite the surreal circumstances. "You all just shift whenever you want? It's not tied to the full moon or anything?" Nora laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "Movies get almost everything wrong. We change at will, though the moon does strengthen our abilities." She studied me with open curiosity. "You really don't remember any of this, do you?" "I'm still not convinced there's anything to remember," I admitted. "This all feels like some elaborate hallucination. Maybe I'm still unconscious in that ravine." "Would a hallucination do this?" She pinched my arm, hard enough to make me yelp. "Point taken," I muttered, rubbing the spot. "But you have to admit, from my perspective, this is completely insane," she supplied. "I can imagine. When my human husband first discovered what we are, he didn't speak for 3 days, just sat there, opening and closing his mouth like a fish." Her expression softened. "But he came around, and so will you." The casual way she spoke of humans as separate from herself sent another wave of dissonance through me. Was that what I was? Or was I something else entirely? "Nora," I began hesitantly, "what exactly happens when a shifter claims someone?" Her eyes widened slightly. "Oh. He told you about that?" "Not exactly. He mentioned it, but when I asked Daniel, my father, he changed the subject." Nora glanced around, then took my arm gently. Let's walk. You need to build your strength anyway. She led me along a path that skirted the edge of the village, away from curious eyes. The air was crisp and clean, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke. In the distance, I could see where the forest thickened, climbing up the mountainside. In our world, Nora explained, there are different kinds of bonds. Pack bonds keep us connected as a community. Family bonds, of course. And then there are mate bonds, the rarest and strongest of all. My stomach tightened with anticipation and something else I couldn't name. And that's what Ronan meant? That I'm his mate? Not exactly, Nora said carefully. A mate bond forms between adults who choose each other. What Ronan and you share is even rarer, a soul claim. It was recognized when you were just a child, and he not much older. That sounds creepy by human standards, Nora supplied with a wry smile. It's not what you're thinking. A soul claim is a recognition, not a binding. It means your souls are complementary, two halves of a whole, but it doesn't become a mate bond unless both parties choose it as adults. She squeezed my arm reassuringly. Ronan has respected that boundary all these years. He's waited for you to grow, to live your life, to return of your own free will. But I didn't return of my own free will, I pointed out. I had an accident. Did you? Nora's gaze was knowing. What brought you to that mountain road in the middle of a snowstorm? The question caught me off guard. After my mother's funeral, I'd felt increasingly restless, drawn to the mountains without understanding why. I'd told my sister I needed a photography trip to clear my head, but the truth was more complicated. An inexplicable pull toward something I couldn't name. Before I could respond, shouts erupted from the north end of the village. People began running in that direction, some shifting to wolf form as they went. Nora tensed beside me. The boundary patrol is back. Something's wrong. Against her protests, I followed the flow of people toward the commotion. We emerged at the edge of a larger clearing where a group of men and women, led by Ronan and Daniel, had gathered around what appeared to be injured pack members. Blood stained the ground, and the metallic scent of it filled the air. Ronan stood at the center of the chaos, issuing commands with quiet authority. His presence was magnetic, drawing the eye even amidst the frantic activity. When he caught sight of me standing at the edge of the crowd, his expression shifted. Surprise, concern, and something more primal flashed across his features. In 3 long strides, he reached me, his hand closing gently but firmly around my upper arm. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low. "Not yet. What happened?" I asked, unable to look away from the wounded shifters being tended to. His jaw tightened. Red Claw scouts, armed with silver. This was no ordinary territorial dispute. His gaze bore into mine. They were looking for something, or someone. The intensity in Ronan's amber gaze held me captive. "Me?" I whispered. "They were looking for me?" His hand tightened fractionally on my arm before he released it. "We need to talk, but not here." To Nora, he added, "Take her back to the cabin. Guard the door. No one enters except me or Daniel." Nora nodded, her earlier warmth replaced by solemn duty. "Yes, Alpha." I resisted as she tried to lead me away. "If this concerns me, I deserve to know what's happening." Something dangerous flickered in Ronan's eyes. Not directed at me, but at the situation unfolding around us. The wounded were being carried toward what I assumed was a healing center, their groans punctuating the tense atmosphere. Blood stained the pristine snow. A stark reminder of violence I still didn't understand. "Charlotte," Ronan said, my name a command on his lips. "I will explain everything, but right now, I need to know you're safe while I deal with this." There was such raw concern beneath his authoritative tone that I found myself nodding despite my frustration. As Nora led me back toward the cabin, I glanced over my shoulder to see Ronan watching me go, his powerful frame silhouetted against the chaos behind him. Only when I was out of sight did he turn back to the wounded. Inside the cabin, Nora paced like the predator she was, occasionally peering out the windows. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything I'd seen. "The Red Claw Pack," I said finally. "Who are they?" Nora's expression darkened. "Our oldest enemies. They control the Eastern Territories. Their alpha, Kieran, is..." She shuddered. Let's just say he rules through fear rather than respect. And they're looking for me? Why? That's Ronan's story to tell. She hesitated, then added, But I will say this. The prophecy that was spoken at your birth has been known to both packs for over 2 decades. The Black Crest see it as hope. The Red Claw see it as threat. Before I could press her further, the door opened, admitting Ronan and Daniel. Both men looked grim, though Ronan had shed his blood-stained outer garments. Nora slipped out without being asked, leaving me alone with them. The room suddenly felt smaller with Ronan's commanding presence filling it. He moved to the hearth, stoking the fire with methodical precision, while Daniel sat heavily in a chair, looking older than he had just hours ago. 4 wounded, Daniel reported wearily. Liam took a silver blade to the shoulder. He'll heal, but slowly. Silver hurts you more than normal weapons? I asked, recalling old legends. Yes, Ronan answered without turning from the fire. It prevents our accelerated healing. Burns like poison in our blood. When he finally faced me, his expression was guarded. You should be resting. I'm fine, I insisted. The pain is almost gone. At his skeptical look, I added, Really, whatever was in that drink Maya gave me worked wonders. Old pack remedies, Daniel said with a hint of pride. Your grandmother was our most skilled healer before Maya. Ronan crossed the room to stand before me, his presence both intimidating and oddly comforting. Without asking permission, he tilted my chin up, examining my face with clinical detachment. His touch was warm against my skin, sending an involuntary shiver down my spine. The bruising is nearly gone, he noted, his voice softer. Then his gaze locked with mine, searching for something. Do you remember anything yet? Dreams? Flashes from your childhood? I wanted to deny it, to cling to the certainty of the life I'd known. But lying seemed pointless when those amber eyes seemed to see through every defense. Fragments, I admitted. Nothing coherent. Just feelings. Sensations. He nodded as if this was expected. It will come. The pack bond has been dormant, not broken. What is this prophecy everyone keeps mentioning? I demanded, tired of cryptic references. What does it have to do with me? Ronan and Daniel exchanged a look loaded with unspoken communication. Finally, Ronan sighed and sat beside me on the bed, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body, yet carefully maintaining a respectful distance. 27 years ago, he began, his deep voice falling into the cadence of a tale often repeated, a seer came to our pack. She was old, respected among all shifters for the truth of her visions. She asked to be present at the birth of the Alpha's child. You, Daniel interjected softly. The seer held you in her arms, Ronan continued, and her eyes clouded with the sight. She spoke of a child born between worlds, wolf blood and human heart, who would unite what was divided. She said this child would stand as both shield and sword for the pack in its darkest hour, and that the future Alpha would recognize his soul's match in her. I frowned. That's conveniently vague, like all prophecies. A ghost of a smile touched Ronan's lips. That's what I said when my father told me the story. The smile faded. I was 7 when you were born, too young to understand the significance. But when I saw you for the first time, he looked away, as if the memory was almost too intense to revisit. Something in me recognized something in you. My father saw it happen, the moment the soul claim took hold. So you've what? Been waiting for me since I was a baby? I couldn't keep the disbelief from my voice. It's not what you're thinking, he cut in, echoing Nora's earlier reassurance. A soul claim isn't possession. It's recognition. I knew what you were to me, but the choice would always be yours. His jaw tightened. And then you were gone, taken by your mother into a world where I couldn't follow. Daniel picked up the narrative. When Vivian fled with you, we searched for months, but she had covered her tracks well, using her brother's identity, creating a new life far from shifter territories. Ronan was just a boy, but he felt the severing of the connection as a physical wound. I glanced at Ronan, trying to imagine him as a child, experiencing such a profound loss. His expression remained stoic, but something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. The Red Claw heard about the prophecy. Daniel continued. They've been searching for you almost as long as we have, but for very different reasons. The seer's words suggested you would help unite the packs, something the Red Claw Alpha has fought against for generations. So they want to kill me? My voice sounded remarkably calm considering the words I was speaking. Or claim you for themselves, Ronan said, his tone hardening. If their Alpha could force a bond with you instead, he believes it would give him power over both packs. I stood abruptly, needing space to think. It's too much. Prophecies, soul claims, rival packs. I ran a hand through my tangled hair. 24 hours ago, I was just a wildlife photographer with a perfectly normal, if somewhat lonely life. Ronan rose as well, not crowding me but maintaining his steady presence. You've never been just anything, Charlotte. Even in the human world, didn't you feel it? The difference? The sense that you were meant for something more? His words struck uncomfortably close to the restlessness that had haunted me my entire life, the feeling that I was searching for something I couldn't name, the inexplicable draw toward wild places, toward the untamed and primal. Even if I believed all this, I said finally, what am I supposed to do? I'm not a shifter. I'm not part of this world. You are of this world, Daniel insisted. You carry the blood of generations of shifters. That you haven't shifted yet doesn't change who you are. I stared at him, the implications of his words sinking in. Yet? You think I could change? Like you do? It's in your blood, Ronan said quietly. Your mother's human genetics may have delayed it, but the potential has always been there. A memory surfaced suddenly. Being 16, burning with fever during a full moon, my mother's panic as she locked me in my room made me swallow bitter herbal teas until the strange sensation subsided. At the time, I'd thought it was just a particularly bad flu. She knew, I whispered. She's been preventing it all these years. Daniel nodded grimly. Vivian was knowledgeable about our biology. She would have known what herbs could suppress the shift. The betrayal cut deep, not just the lies about my father, my heritage, but the active suppression of my very nature. Yet I could also understand her fear, her desperate desire to protect her child from a world filled with danger and ancient feuds. I need air, I said abruptly, moving toward the door. Ronan blocked my path with a single step. It's not safe. The Red Claw could still have scouts in our territory. I glared up at him, frustration and confusion fueling a sudden anger. I've been taking care of myself for 27 years without your protection. I'm not about to become a prisoner because of some prophecy I never asked for. Something flashed in his eyes, admiration, amusement. It was gone before I could identify it. You never were easy to control, he murmured, as if recalling a memory, even as a child. You don't know me, I insisted, though the words lacked conviction. I knew you, he countered. And I will know you again. The intensity of his gaze made my heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. I broke eye contact first, unnerved by my body's response to his proximity. If you need space, Daniel intervened, there's a protected garden behind the healing center. Walled, guarded, but open to the sky. He gave Ronan a meaningful look. She's not a captive, son. Tension radiated from Ronan's powerful frame. But after a moment, he stepped aside. I'll take you there myself. The walk through the village was an exercise in restraint. Every passing shifter paused to stare, some with naked curiosity, others with reverence that made me deeply uncomfortable. Ronan walked beside me, not touching but close enough that his presence served as both shield and statement. The message was clear to all who saw us. I was under his protection. The garden, when we reached it, was a small sanctuary of winter beauty. Evergreens provided shelter from the wind, and hardy plants still offered spots of color against the snow. Stone benches surrounded a central fire pit where flames danced, providing warmth in the winter chill. This was your grandmother's creation, Ronan said as we entered. She believed healing required more than just physical remedies. I moved to the fire, extending my hands toward its warmth. Was she a shifter too? One of our most powerful. She could heal injuries that should have been fatal. He remained near the entrance, giving me the space I'd requested. Your gift may manifest differently, But it's in your blood." "My gift?" I echoed. "I don't have any gifts. Your connection to animals," he said, as if it were obvious. "Your photographs capture something most humans never see. The soul behind the eyes." I stared at him. "How do you know about my photography?" A shadow of guilt crossed his features. "After your mother contacted Daniel, I kept tabs on you, from a distance." At my expression, he added hastily, "Nothing invasive, just making sure you were safe, that the Red Claw hadn't found you first." I wanted to be angry at this admission of surveillance, but found I couldn't summon the energy. Too much had happened too quickly. My entire worldview had shifted in less than a day. I sank onto one of the stone benches, suddenly exhausted despite my earlier claims of recovery. Ronan approached cautiously, like one would a wounded animal, and sat on the bench opposite mine. For several minutes, we existed in silence, broken only by the crackling fire and distant sounds of the pack going about their daily lives. "Tell me about yourself," I said finally. "If we were supposedly connected as children, I should at least know who you are now." Surprise flashed across his face, followed by a thoughtful expression. "What do you want to know? How did you become Alpha? Was it inherited?" He nodded. "My father was Alpha before me. He stepped down 5 years ago when his health began to fail. Is he still alive?" "No." Grief flickered briefly in his eyes. "He held on long enough to see me take his place, then joined my mother beyond the veil a month later." The formal phrasing caught my attention. "Your beliefs. What happens after death? We return to the earth, but our spirits run with the eternal pack under endless stars." He smiled slightly at my expression. "Not so different from many human beliefs, really. And you've been Alpha for 5 years? Do you like it?" His laugh was unexpected, rich and warm, transforming his severe features into something approaching boyish charm. "Like it? No one likes being Alpha. It's duty, responsibility. Every decision affects the pack. Every mistake costs someone something." He sobered. "But it's who I am. What I was born to be. You never wanted anything else? Never thought about leaving?" His amber eyes held mine. I had one reason to consider it. She was taken from me 24 years ago. The implication hung between us, heavy with meaning I wasn't ready to examine. I looked away first, focusing instead on the dancing flames. "You said earlier that the Red Claw Alpha could force a bond," I said, changing the subject. "Is that possible?" Ronan's expression darkened. "No true mate bond can be forced, but there are rituals, dark ones. They twist the natural order, create a shallow imitation of the bond." His hands clenched into fists. "It would bind you to him in body but never in spirit, a living death." The clinical detachment I'd been maintaining cracked slightly at the horror in his voice. This was real to him. All of it. The danger, the prophecy, the connection he claimed existed between us. "And what about us?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "What kind of bond would it be?" His gaze softened, warming to molten gold in the firelight. "True, deep, equal." He leaned forward slightly. "But freely chosen, Charlotte, always freely chosen." Something stirred within me at his words. A recognition that resonated in my blood, my bones, the very core of me. For a disorienting moment, I saw not the imposing Alpha before me, but a young boy with the same amber eyes, holding out his hand to me across a moonlit clearing. "I'll always find you," the boy promised in my memory, "no matter where you go." The vision faded as quickly as it had come, leaving me shaken. "I remembered something," I admitted. "You as a child, making me a promise." Hope and longing flashed across Ronan's features before he schooled his expression. "The night before you disappeared, we were playing in the moonlight. You were scared of something, a nightmare you'd had. You promised you'd always find me." I touched my pendant absently. "But you didn't." Pain darkened his eyes. "Not for lack of trying. I searched for years. When I became Alpha, I sent trackers into the human world. But your mother had hidden you too well, until she contacted Daniel." "Yes." He hesitated, then asked carefully, "How did she die?" "Cancer," I replied. the grief still fresh. It was quick at the end, peaceful. I studied him. She never mentioned any of this, even at the end when she knew she was dying. But she gave me this pendant, said it was a family heirloom that would protect me when she couldn't. She was right about that. Ronan gestured to the silver disc. The runes are ancient pack magic. They shield your scent, your essence, from those who would track you. The distant sound of a horn interrupted our conversation. Ronan was on his feet immediately, tension evident in every line of his powerful body. "What is it?" I asked, rising as well. "A challenge," he said grimly. "It seems the Red Claw Alpha is tired of sending scouts." His eyes met mine, fierce and determined. "He's come himself." "He's here?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "For me?" Ronan's expression hardened into something ancient and predatory. "Stay here," he commanded, already moving toward the garden entrance. "Guards will be posted. Do not leave this sanctuary under any circumstances." "Wait!" I caught his arm, surprised by my own boldness. His muscles tensed beneath my fingers, but he paused. "If this is about me, shouldn't I be there?" "Absolutely not." His voice brooked no argument. "Kieran would see you as either a prize to take or a threat to eliminate. I won't risk either." Before I could protest further, he gently but firmly removed my hand from his arm. "Trust me, Charlotte. Please." Something in his tone, the barely concealed fear beneath the authority, silenced my objections. I nodded once, and he was gone, the garden door secured behind him. Within moments, 2 shifters took up positions just outside, a man and a woman, both with the watchful alertness of experienced guards. Restless energy coursed through me as I paced the garden's perimeter. The horn had stirred something primal in my blood, a call to action, to defense, to pack. These instincts felt foreign yet somehow deeply familiar, as though they'd always existed beneath the surface of my consciousness, waiting for permission to emerge. I found myself straining to hear what was happening beyond the garden walls. Fragments of sound reached me, voices raised in challenge, the low rumble of a growl that seemed too deep to be human. Frustration mounted with each passing minute. Whatever was happening out there involved me directly, yet I was kept apart from it, protected like a child. The garden had only one entrance, but as I completed my 3rd circuit, I noticed a small shed built into the rear wall. Its weathered wooden door was partially concealed by a climbing vine, hardy even in winter. Curiosity drew me closer. The latch yielded easily to my touch, revealing not a shed, but a narrow passageway through the wall. I hesitated only briefly. Ronan had ordered me to stay, but something stronger than reason propelled me forward. The same instinct that had drawn me to these mountains in the first place. The passage was dim but navigable, emerging behind the healing center where I'd seen the wounded being taken earlier. The village center was deserted, everyone apparently gathered at whatever meeting point the challenging horn had summoned them to. I followed the sound of voices, keeping to the shadows between buildings. The snow muffled my footsteps as I moved, grateful for the first time that I lacked a shifter's enhanced senses. No one would smell my approach. At the northern edge of the village, I found what appeared to be the entire pack assembled in a large clearing ringed with torches. At its center stood Ronan, flanked by Daniel and other shifters I assumed were his senior pack members. Facing them across the clearing was another group, their stance aggressive, their expressions cold. The man at their center could only be Kieran, the Red Claw Alpha. Where Ronan was all controlled power and quiet authority, this man exuded cruelty and arrogance. Taller than most around him, with dark hair streaked prematurely with silver, and eyes so pale they appeared almost colorless in the torchlight. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to jawline, twisting his features into a permanent sneer. I crept closer, concealing myself behind a woodpile at the clearing's edge. From this vantage point, I could hear every word exchanged. "Your scouts violated our territory," Ronan was saying, his voice carrying easily across the clearing. "They attacked my people without provocation." Kieran's laugh held no warmth. "Provocation? Your very existence is provocation, Blackcrest. Your pack's weakness insults the old ways." "The old ways are dying," Ronan replied evenly. "The human world encroaches more each year. Adaptation is survival. Corruption is what it is." Kieran's pale gaze swept the assembled Blackcrest pack with contempt. "Taking human mates, living half in their world. You dilute our bloodlines, weaken what should remain pure. Daniel stepped forward, his bearing dignified despite his age. You speak of purity, yet your own grandfather took a human mate. Or have you conveniently forgotten that part of your lineage? A murmur rippled through both packs at this revelation. Kieran's face contorted with rage. Watch your tongue, old man, or I'll tear it from your head. Ronan moved subtly, placing himself between Kieran and Daniel. State your purpose here, Red Claw. Challenge or parley? Information, Kieran replied, his anger settling into cold calculation. A human vehicle was found wrecked in the ravine between our territories. The driver's scent was unusual, neither fully human nor shifter. His colorless eyes narrowed. When my scouts followed the trail, it led here. The mountains are treacherous in winter, Ronan said neutrally. Many travelers meet unfortunate ends. Don't play games, Kieran snapped. We both know who was in that car. His voice dropped to a dangerous purr. The prophesied child, Vivian's daughter, the one who was taken. Tension crackled through the assembly like lightning. I pressed myself deeper into the shadows, heart hammering in my chest. If such a person existed, Ronan replied carefully, they would fall under my protection as alpha of this territory, unless they chose otherwise, Kieran countered. The prophecy doesn't specify which alpha would claim the bond, only that the future of both packs hinges upon it. Daniel shook his head. You've always misinterpreted the seer's words to suit your ambitions. She spoke of uniting what was divided, not conquest through force. Semantics, Kieran dismissed with a wave of his hand. What matters is power, and we all know where the true power in this prophecy lies. His gaze swept the clearing again, as if searching for something. Or someone. Where are you hiding her, Ronan? Let her choose for herself. Which pack, which alpha, is worthy of her allegiance? Ronan's stance shifted subtly, his muscles coiling with barely restrained aggression. She's not a prize to be claimed, or a weapon to be wielded. She's a person with free will, and she's under my protection until she decides her own path. Noble words, Kieran mocked. But hollow coming from a man who's been obsessed with finding her since childhood. How is your protection any different from my claim? Because I would die before forcing her into anything, Ronan growled, his control slipping for the first time. Can you say the same? The two alphas stared at each other across the clearing, the air between them almost visibly charged with hostility. Neither would back down. Both believed absolutely in their right to stand their ground. 3 days, Kieran said finally. I give you 3 days to produce this woman, or admit she doesn't exist. After that, I'll consider her hidden from me by force, and act accordingly. His lips curled into a cruel smile. And we both know what that means. War, one of Ronan's pack members whispered, though in the tense silence, it carried. If necessary, Kieran agreed. Though it could all be avoided if you simply let me meet this prophesied savior. He glanced around once more. Who knows? Perhaps she'd prefer a pack with true strength, true purpose, rather than one that cowers at the edges of the human world. Something hot and defiant surged through me at his words. Without conscious thought, I found myself stepping out from my hiding place, drawn into the torchlight like a moth to flame. Perhaps she would prefer to speak for herself, I called, my voice steadier than I felt. Every head turned in my direction. Shock registered on both Ronan's and Daniel's faces, while Kieran's expression transformed into predatory delight. Charlotte, Ronan breathed, the single word laden with dismay and warning. I ignored him, walking into the clearing with a confidence I didn't entirely feel. The pendant at my throat seemed to warm against my skin, giving me courage. As I passed Ronan, his hand shot out to grasp my wrist, but I shook my head slightly. After a moment of silent communication, he released me, though the tension in his body suggested he was ready to intervene at the slightest provocation. I stopped in the center of the clearing, directly between the two packs. Up close, Kieran was even more intimidating, taller than Ronan, with a wiry strength evident beneath his clothing. His pale eyes assessed me like a predator evaluating prey, calculating weakness and advantage. "So," he said, his voice a silky drawl, "the lost child returns." How convenient for the Black Crest. "I had an accident," I replied evenly. "They found me, helped me. Nothing more sinister than basic decency." Kieran circled me slowly, his gaze never leaving mine. I forced myself to stand still, to show no fear despite the instinctive revulsion his proximity triggered. "You don't remember, do you?" he asked, stopping directly before me. "Your true nature, your place in all of this." "I'm remembering more every hour," I replied, the half-truth falling easily from my lips. "Including that my mother fled with me for a reason." "Yes," he agreed, "fear. Always a powerful motivator, but rarely a wise counselor." He reached out as if to touch my face, and I heard Ronan's low growl from behind me. Kieran's smile widened. "Protective, isn't he? But tell me, Charlotte, has he told you everything? About the prophecy? About what you truly are?" Doubt flickered through me, but I kept my expression neutral. "He's told me enough to know I shouldn't trust someone who sends armed scouts to attack innocent people." "Innocent?" Kieran laughed. "There are no innocents in this ancient game, little one. Only players and pawns." His voice dropped to a near whisper. "The question is, which are you?" "Neither," I said firmly. "I make my own choices, and what choice would that be? To align with a pack that dilutes its strength through human entanglements? Or one that preserves the old ways, the true power of our kind?" I sensed Ronan tensing behind me, ready to intervene. The entire clearing held its breath, waiting for my response. "I choose," I said carefully, "to take time to understand both sides before making any decision." I met Kieran's pale gaze directly. "I've only just learned about this world, about what I might be. I won't be rushed into allegiance based on a prophecy I didn't ask for." Frustration flickered across Kieran's features, quickly masked by calculated charm. "Reasonable, more than reasonable." He stepped back, giving a mocking bow. "I withdraw my 3-day ultimatum. Instead, I extend an invitation. Visit my territory. Meet my pack. See for yourself the strength of the Red Claw before you tie yourself to the Black Crest through bonds that cannot be broken." "She doesn't leave this territory," Ronan interjected, moving to stand beside me. His presence was solid, reassuring. "Are you her jailer, then?" Kieran challenged. "Keeping her prisoner just as surely as you accuse me of wanting to?" I felt Ronan struggle, his instinct to protect warring with his earlier promise that all choices would be mine. Before he could respond, I spoke. "I'll consider your invitation," I told Kieran, ignoring Ronan's sharp intake of breath. "But not now. I'm still recovering from my accident and learning about this world. Give me time." Kieran studied me, his pale eyes calculating. "A week," he said finally. "I'll return in 7 days for your answer." He glanced at Ronan. "Surely your alpha can spare you by then. Unless, of course, he fears what you might learn beyond his influence." The challenge was clear, and I could feel Ronan's restraint like a physical force beside me. His hand found mine, fingers interlacing with surprising gentleness, despite the tension radiating from him. 1 week, he agreed, his voice controlled. "Charlotte will give you her answer then." With a satisfied smirk, Kieran turned to leave, his pack falling in behind him. At the edge of the clearing, he paused and looked back. "Oh, and Charlotte, I knew your mother better than these Black Crest would admit. Ask them about the night you were taken. Ask them what really happened to make Vivian flee in such terror." With that parting shot, he disappeared into the darkness of the forest, his pack melting away like shadows. As soon as they were gone, the clearing erupted into anxious conversation. Ronan turned to me, his expression a complex mixture of anger, concern, and something that might have been admiration. "That," he said quietly, "was either very brave or very foolish." "Probably both," I admitted, suddenly aware that I was still holding his hand. I released it awkwardly, missing the warmth immediately. I couldn't just hide while he made threats and demands about me. Daniel approached, his weathered face grave. Kieran will use this week to prepare, not just to persuade you, but to strengthen his position should you refuse him. You mean for war? I said, the reality of the situation sinking in. Ronan's expression hardened. It's what he's wanted for years. The prophecy just gives him justification. He placed a hand on my shoulder, the touch cautious but grounding. We should get you back to the cabin. You've had enough excitement for one day. As we walked back through the village, the pack parted respectfully, but I could feel the weight of their gazes, some curious, others hopeful, a few openly dubious. I realized with a jolt that they were all depending on me now, whether I wanted that responsibility or not. In the cabin, a fire had been lit, and a simple meal laid out. I hadn't realized how hungry I was until the scent of hearty stew and fresh bread reached me. We ate in relative silence, the confrontation with Kieran hanging over us like a storm cloud. What did Kieran mean? I asked finally, setting aside my empty bowl. About my mother. About the night I was taken. Ronan and Daniel exchanged a loaded glance. It was Daniel who answered, his voice heavy with old grief. The night Vivian fled with you, there was an attack on our main gathering hall. A celebration for the winter solstice, your birthday. The Red Claw broke our ancient truce, killed 3 of our pack. He paused, pain evident in his eyes. One was my brother, your uncle. Vivian witnessed it all, Ronan continued quietly. She saw what shifters were capable of at their worst. In her fear and grief, she believed taking you away was the only way to keep you safe. Not just from the Red Claw, but from your own nature. She feared what I might become, I whispered, understanding dawning, that I'd be capable of the same violence. Daniel reached across the table to take my hand. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. She did what she thought was right. But Kieran implied there was more to the story. Ronan's jaw tightened. Kieran twists truth to serve his purposes. He wants to sow doubt, to isolate you from us, so you're more vulnerable to his influence. I studied both men, searching for signs of deception. Finding none, I nodded slowly. Then we have a week to prepare for whatever he's planning. We, Ronan repeated, something like hope kindling in his amber eyes. Yes, we, I confirmed. Whatever I decide about my future, I won't let him threaten this pack, my father's pack, without standing against him. I touched the pendant at my throat. This isn't just about me or some prophecy. It's about protecting people from a tyrant. The smile that spread across Ronan's face transformed him, softening the hard edges of his alpha persona to reveal the man beneath. Then we begin your training tomorrow. If you're to stand with us, you need to understand what you are capable of. You think I can shift? I asked, both fear and excitement threading through me at the possibility. I think, he said carefully, that you have untapped potential that goes beyond shifting. The prophecy spoke of one who stands between worlds, neither fully wolf nor fully human, but something unique, something powerful. As night deepened around the cabin, I found myself standing at the small window, gazing out at the stars scattered across the mountain sky. Somewhere out there, Kieran and his pack were returning to their territory, plotting their next move. Yet strangely, I felt more at peace than I had in years, as though some restless part of me had finally found its place. Ronan joined me at the window, his presence warm at my back. What are you thinking? He asked softly. That the stars look different here, I replied. Brighter. Closer somehow. They are closer, he said, his voice a low rumble that I felt more than heard. The mountain brings us nearer to them, to the eternal hunting grounds where all shifters eventually run. I turned to face him, struck by how natural it felt to stand this close to him, as if my body remembered a familiarity my mind had forgotten. You really believe I'm part of the prophecy, don't you? That I can help unite the packs? His gaze was steady, certain. I believe you are exactly where you're meant to be, Charlotte. Whether that fulfills the prophecy or not is secondary to the fact that you found your way home. Home. The word resonated within me, stirring emotions I couldn't fully name. For so long, I'd felt adrift, searching for something I couldn't define. Could this place, these people, be what I'd been missing all along? As if reading my thoughts, Ronan reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "Rest now," he said gently. "Tomorrow, we begin to reclaim what was taken from you." The promise in his words followed me into sleep, where I dreamed of running through moonlit forests on 4 paws instead of 2, with a powerful silver wolf always at my side. Dawn broke with golden light spilling through the cabin windows, rousing me from the most restful sleep I'd had in years. The dreams still lingered, running through forests, feeling the earth beneath paws I didn't yet possess, the exhilaration of moving as part of something larger than myself. A pack. My pack. Maya arrived shortly after I woke, bearing fresh clothes and a steaming mug of herbal tea. "Ronan asks that you join him at the training grounds when you're ready," she said, setting the items down. "The entire pack is talking about how you stood up to Kieran." A smile touched her lips. It was either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish. "That seems to be the consensus," I replied, sipping the tea. This brew was different from before, less medicinal, more invigorating. "What's in this?" "Herbs to help awaken dormant abilities," Maya explained. "For generations, your mother used suppressants to keep your shifter nature at bay. We need to undo that damage if you're to access your full potential." The thought both thrilled and terrified me. What if I can't shift? What if that part of me is too deeply buried? Maya's expression softened. "Shifting isn't everything, Charlotte. The prophecy spoke of one who stands between worlds. Perhaps your strength lies precisely in being both, rather than having to choose." Her words stayed with me as I dressed and made my way through the village. In daylight, the pack's settlement revealed itself more fully. Not primitive as I'd first thought, but a harmonious blend of tradition and practicality. Solar panels discreetly mounted on cabin roofs, a small school where young shifters learned alongside human-raised pack children. Gardens prepared for spring planting, carefully protected against the mountain winter. I found Ronan at a clearing on the eastern edge of the settlement. He was training with several younger pack members, his movements fluid and powerful as he demonstrated fighting techniques. Shirtless, despite the morning chill, his body told its own story of battles survived. Scars, both old and newer, mapped across his skin like constellations. He sensed my presence immediately, pausing mid-demonstration to turn toward me. Something like pleasure warmed his amber eyes before he schooled his expression and dismissed his students. "You look better," he said, approaching while pulling a shirt over his head. "The healing is progressing well." "I feel stronger," I admitted. "Different somehow." He studied me intently. "Maya's tea is working. Your scent is changing, becoming more shifter than human." I raised an eyebrow. "You can smell that?" A hint of a smile touched his lips. "I can smell many things about you, Charlotte. Your curiosity, your determination, your growing comfort in our world." He gestured toward the training area. "Are you ready to begin?" For the next several hours, Ronan worked with me patiently, teaching me basics of pack dynamics, shifter biology, and self-defense techniques that would work even without supernatural strength. He was a surprisingly good teacher, firm but encouraging, pushing me without breaking my confidence. "The shift comes from here," he explained, placing his hand lightly over my sternum. The warmth of his touch radiated through my thin shirt. Not from thought, but from instinct, from necessity, from emotion. I tried to focus on his words rather than his proximity. My mother suppressed it for so long. "What if I've lost the ability altogether?" "Nothing is truly lost," he countered, "just hidden, waiting to be reclaimed." By midday, I was exhausted but exhilarated. Though I hadn't shifted, I'd felt something stirring deep within. A presence, ancient and wild, stretching after decades of forced slumber. We broke for a meal, joining Daniel and other senior pack members at the communal dining area. The atmosphere was both relaxed and purposeful as they discussed preparations for Kieran's return. "Nora's scouts report Red Claw movement along the eastern border," a broad-shouldered man named Thomas reported. "They're gathering strength, as we expected." "And our allies in the Southern Ridge Pack?" Ronan asked. "They'll stand with us if it comes to conflict," Daniel confirmed. "They've had their own troubles with Kieran's expansionism." I listened intently, absorbing the complex politics of this world I was suddenly part of. The Black Crest were not alone in their struggle against Kieran's vision of shifter superiority. 3 other packs had formed loose alliances with them, preferring Ronan's leadership style that balanced tradition with necessary adaptation to the changing world. "Charlotte," Daniel said, turning to me, "there's someone I'd like you to meet after the meal. Someone who knew your mother well." Curiosity piqued. I followed Daniel after we finished eating. He led me to a small cabin set apart from the others, nestled against the edge of the forest. Before he could knock, the door swung open to reveal an elderly woman with snow-white hair and piercing green eyes. "So," she said, her voice surprisingly strong for her apparent age. "Vivian's daughter has returned at last." Daniel smiled fondly at the woman. "Charlotte, this is Era. She was your mother's closest friend during her time here, and she was present when the prophecy was spoken." Ira gestured for us to enter. The cabin's interior was a fascinating blend of modern and ancient. Books on anthropology and biology sharing shelf space with herbs, crystals, and what appeared to be ritual objects. "Your mother was a remarkable woman," Era said, settling into a worn armchair and motioning for me to take the seat opposite. "Brilliant, curious, afraid of nothing. Until she had you. You don't blame her for taking me away?" I asked. Era's green eyes softened with understanding. "Fear for one's child is the most primal emotion of all. What happened that night with the Red Claw attack? It broke something in her. Made her see only danger where before she had seen wonder." She leaned forward, studying me intently. "But you have her courage, and her mind, along with your father's heart. A rare combination." Daniel excused himself, leaving me alone with the elder woman. For the next hour, she shared stories of my mother as a young researcher who had stumbled upon the shifter world by accident and embraced it with passionate curiosity. Who had fallen in love not just with Daniel, but with the entire pack's way of life. Who had documented their traditions and helped them navigate the encroaching human world without losing their identity. "She created these," Era said, showing me journals filled with my mother's handwriting. Detailed observations, sketches, and what appeared to be scientific notes on shifter biology. Her greatest work, her legacy to both worlds. I traced my fingers over the familiar handwriting, seeing my mother in a completely new light. Not just the practical, somewhat distant parent I'd known, but a passionate researcher, a woman in love, a bridge between worlds. "She never stopped caring for Daniel," Era continued gently. "Never stopped missing this place. But fear is a powerful force, and the fear for one's child the most powerful of all." "Kieran suggested there was more to the story of why she left," I said carefully. "Something the Black Crest aren't telling me." Era's expression hardened slightly. "Kieran twists truth to serve his purposes. What he likely referred to was the prophecy itself, the full prophecy, not just the parts most commonly repeated." "There's more to it?" "There always is with such things." Ira rose and retrieved an ancient-looking leather-bound book from a locked cabinet. The seer's words were recorded in their entirety by the pack historian. Few have read them since that night. She opened the book to a marked page and handed it to me. The handwriting was faded but legible, the words sending a chill down my spine as I read. "Between 2 worlds she stands, wolf blood with human heart, neither and both, the bridge across divided lands. When moon and sun align, her power shall awaken. The Alpha's soul-claimed mate shall either heal the ancient wound or deepen it beyond repair. Blood will answer blood, and in her choice lies either salvation or destruction for all wolf kind." I looked up from the page, my mouth dry. "Destruction? No one mentioned that part. Most choose to focus on the hope of healing," Era said softly. "But prophecies are rarely simple, rarely certain. They speak of potential, not inevitability. And my mother knew this? The full version?" Era nodded. "She was present when it was spoken. The thought that her child might be responsible for destruction, for bloodshed, it was more than she could bear. She chose to remove you from the equation entirely." I closed the book, my mind racing. "Does Ronan know I've seen this?" "Ronan has read the full prophecy," Era confirmed. "He bears the weight of that knowledge along with everything else, but he chooses to believe in the possibility of healing rather than destruction." "Because of the soul claim?" Era's smile held ancient wisdom. Because of who you are, Charlotte. Who you have always been, even when separated from your heritage. The soul claim recognized what already existed. It did not create it. As evening approached, I found myself drawn to the cliffs overlooking the valley. The sun was setting, painting the snow-covered landscape in shades of gold and rose. From this vantage point, I could see the entirety of the Black Crest territory, the village nestled among ancient pines, the winding river partially frozen in winter's grip, the distant mountains that separated this domain from the Redclaw lands. I sensed Ronan's approach before I heard him, another new awareness developing within me. He joined me silently, respecting my contemplative mood. Era showed me the full prophecy, I said after a while. The part about destruction. He nodded, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I wondered when she would. Why didn't you tell me? Would it have helped? He asked simply. Or would it have placed an even heavier burden on shoulders already carrying too much? I considered this, appreciating his honesty. Kieran knows the full version? Yes. It's why he fears you as much as he desires control over you. In his mind, the only way to ensure you don't bring destruction to shifter kind is to control you completely. And you? I turned to face him fully. What do you believe? Ronan's amber eyes met mine, unguarded for perhaps the first time. I believe in you, Charlotte. Not in prophecies or ancient words, but in the woman standing before me. The woman who faced Kieran without flinching. Who is trying to understand a world thrust upon her without warning. His voice softened. The woman who has always been part of me. Even when separated by time and distance, the sincerity in his words touched something deep within me. For days I'd been struggling with the concept of the soul claim, seeing it as something mystical and imposed. But standing here with Ronan, I felt the truth of it. Not as a binding, but as a recognition of something that had always existed. I remember more now, I admitted. Dreams, fragments, a boy with amber eyes who promised to find me. Hope flickered across his features. And has he? Found you? I think, I said carefully, that perhaps we found each other. Something shifted between us then, tension giving way to possibility. Slowly, giving me every opportunity to pull away, Ronan raised his hand to cup my cheek. His touch was gentle, almost reverent, his calloused palm warm against my skin. Charlotte, he breathed. My name a question, and a prayer on his lips. I answered by closing the distance between us, pressing my lips to his in a kiss that felt like coming home. His arms encircled me, strong and secure, as the contact deepened with years of unspoken longing. Heat surged through my body, not just desire, but something deeper, more primal. A connection that transcended the physical. When we finally broke apart, Ronan stared at me with wonder. Your eyes, he whispered. What about them? They changed, just for a moment. His voice was hushed with awe. Wolf eyes, glowing blue. The revelation should have frightened me, but instead I felt a surge of exhilaration. The barrier within me was cracking, my true nature beginning to emerge. I laughed, the sound carried away by the mountain wind. Is that a good sign? I asked. His smile was answer enough, but he replied anyway. The best possible sign. The moment was interrupted by an urgent howl from the village, not an alarm, but a summons. Ronan tensed, listening to a message I couldn't yet decipher. What is it? I asked. Scouts have returned with news, he explained, already turning toward the village. Kieran is mobilizing faster than expected. We need to prepare. The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. I trained with Ronan and other pack members, building both physical strength and deeper understanding of shifter ways. Maya continued her herbal treatments, each dose bringing my dormant abilities closer to the surface. Daniel shared my mother's research journals, which contained insights into the unique biology of human shifter offspring. On the evening of the 4th day, as I practiced meditation techniques with Era designed to break down the final barriers to shifting, an explosion of activity disrupted the village. Shifters ran toward the northern border, some already changing forms as they moved. Era and I hurried to the main gathering area, where Ronan stood with his senior pack members around a crude map. Redclaw scouts attacked our border patrol, he was saying as we approached. 3 wounded, 1 critically. They're testing our defenses, looking for weaknesses. Kieran's not waiting for the 7 days to end, Daniel observed grimly. Ronan's expression was thunderous. He never intended to honor that timeline. It was just to give him time to prepare. His gaze found me in the crowd, concern evident in his eyes. We need to accelerate our preparations. The full moon is tomorrow night. Kieran will use its power to strengthen his forces for a major assault. The gravity of the situation settled over the assembly. Tomorrow night could bring all-out war between the packs, with my presence as the catalyst. As the meeting dispersed into focused activity, Ronan pulled me aside. Charlotte, if shifting hasn't happened by tomorrow night, I want you hidden in the deep sanctuary caves. Nora will show you. No, I interrupted firmly. I won't hide while others fight because of me. This isn't just about you, he said, frustration edging his voice. It's about protecting what Kieran wants most. If he captures you, then I need to be ready to face him, I insisted. Shifting or not. Our eyes locked in silent battle of wills. Finally, Ronan sighed. One more attempt tonight. The waterfall pool. The sacred space has helped others break through when nothing else worked. The waterfall pool turned out to be a secluded grotto half a mile from the village, where a small waterfall, miraculously unfrozen despite winter's grip, fed into a steaming pool. Ancient runes were carved into the surrounding rock faces, similar to those on my pendant. This place has been sacred to shifters for centuries, Ronan explained as we arrived under the light of the waxing moon. The water carries minerals that enhance our natural abilities, and the boundary between human and wolf is thinner here. Steam rose from the pool's surface, carrying a mineral scent that seemed to awaken something primal within me. Ronan lit torches placed in iron brackets around the pool, their flickering light creating a mystical atmosphere. What do I do? I asked, suddenly nervous. Enter the pool, he instructed. Let the water surround you completely. When you emerge, focus on the feeling, not the form. The shift comes from instinct, not intellect. He turned his back respectfully as I undressed and slipped into the warm water. The heat enveloped me immediately, along with a tingling sensation that penetrated to my bones. I submerged completely, letting the mineral-rich water wash over my face, through my hair. Beneath the surface, something shifted in my perception. The world became both sharper and more fluid, sounds and scents filtering through water yet somehow clearer than before. When my lungs demanded air, I burst to the surface with a gasp. Ronan stood at the pool's edge, his expression intent. How do you feel? Different, I managed, my voice sounding strange to my own ears, like my skin is too tight. That's good, he encouraged. That's the beginning. Now come out and focus on that feeling. Let it expand rather than fighting it. I climbed from the pool, barely noticing the cold air on my wet skin. The sensation of tightness increased, along with a strange heat building at my core. Ronan handed me a robe, which I clutched around myself as the strange feelings intensified. It hurts, I gasped as a spasm ran through me. The first time often does, he said gently. Years of suppression breaking free at once. Don't fight it, Charlotte. Embrace it. Another spasm, stronger this time, drove me to my knees. The world blurred around me, colors and scents overwhelming my senses. I felt Ronan's hand on my shoulder, anchoring me as the transformation tore through my body. Let go, he whispered. Trust what's inside you. With a final surge of pain that gave way to euphoria, I surrendered to the change. My perspective shifted dramatically, dropping closer to the ground as my body reconfigured itself. Bones reformed, muscles stretched and changed, senses exploded into new clarity. Where a woman had knelt moments before, a wolf now stood, smaller than the full shifters but undeniably powerful, with fur the same pale gold as my human hair, and eyes that retained their human blue. I staggered slightly, adjusting to 4 legs instead of 2. Ronan's expression was one of wonder and pride. Charlotte, he breathed. You did it. The world looked entirely different through wolf eyes, sharper, filled with scents and sounds I'd never noticed before. I took an experimental step, then another, marveling at the natural grace of this new form. Ronan stepped back, and shed his own clothing with efficient movements. A moment later, a massive silver wolf stood before me, Ronan in his true form, powerful and majestic. He approached slowly, touching his nose to mine in a gesture of welcome and recognition. A new form of communication opened between us. Not words, but images, emotions, instincts shared directly from mind to mind. Through this bond, Ronan guided me, showing me how to move, how to use my new senses, how to embrace this other self that had always been part of me. We ran together under the nearly full moon, through forests and across snow-covered meadows, the exhilaration of freedom unlike anything I'd ever experienced. For the first time in my life, I felt completely whole, neither fully human nor fully wolf, but both simultaneously, the division healed by acceptance rather than choice. When we finally returned to the grotto, the shift back to human form came easier than expected, guided by Ronan's mental support. We dressed in companionable silence, the experience having created a deeper bond between us than words could express. "Now you understand," he said as we walked back toward the village. "What it truly means to be a shifter." I nodded, still processing the profound experience. It's not changing into something else. It's becoming fully yourself. His smile was warm with approval. Exactly. Two aspects of one whole being, neither complete without the other. When we reached the village, we found it in a state of high alert. Tomas approached immediately, his expression grave. 3 more border incursions in the last hour, he reported. And our allies from the Southern Ridge report Red Claw movement on their borders as well. Kieran's not waiting for tomorrow night. He's coming now. Ronan's demeanor shifted instantly from companion to alpha. Sound the assembly. All fighters to defensive positions. Non-combatants to the sanctuary caves. He turned to me. This changes everything. Are you ready? The question encompassed far more than the impending conflict. Was I ready to fully embrace this world? To take my place in it? To stand with Ronan not just against Kieran, but beyond that? As his equal, his partner, his mate? Yes, I said simply, the word carrying the weight of decision, of destiny accepted rather than imposed. The next hours passed in organized chaos as the pack prepared for battle. I stayed at Ronan's side, my newly awakened shifter senses providing insights that surprised even the experienced warriors. I could detect nuances in sense, in patterns of movement that others missed, my hybrid nature giving me unique perspectives. By midnight, we stood at the village's northern perimeter, with the pack's strongest fighters arrayed around us. The forest beyond was eerily silent, but our enhanced senses detected movement in the darkness, many bodies approaching with predatory stealth. He brought his entire fighting force, Daniel observed grimly. At least 30 shifters, all battle-trained. Ronan nodded, his expression resolute. We expected nothing less. He raised his voice to address the assembled defenders. Remember, we fight to protect, not to destroy. Incapacitate when possible. Kill only when necessary. We will not become what we stand against. The noble words strengthened my resolve. This was a leader worth standing beside, one who valued life even in conflict, who saw power as responsibility rather than entitlement. The attack came suddenly, dark shapes erupting from the tree line with feral growls. Battle-shifted wolves, larger and more savage than their natural counterparts, charged our position. Our defenders met them with disciplined formation, holding the line against the initial assault. I shifted forms with surprising ease, the transformation now feeling natural rather than forced. Beside me, Ronan became the massive silver wolf, radiating authority and power. Through our strengthening bond, I felt his strategic mind working, directing pack members with efficiency born of years of leadership. The fighting was chaotic, but focused, neither side gaining clear advantage. I stayed near Ronan, our movements synchronized as if we'd fought together for years. My smaller form allowed me quicker movements, while his power provided the force needed to repel larger opponents. Then, through the chaos, I sensed a familiar presence, cold, calculating, driven by ambition rather than loyalty. Kieran had arrived, hanging back from the main battle, watching for his opportunity. I projected the awareness to Ronan through our bond. His response was immediate: concern, protectiveness, but also trust in my abilities. We began working our way toward Kieran's position, fighting side by side through the ongoing battle. We found him at the edge of the conflict, flanked by his personal guards. In his shifted form, Kieran was enormous, a black wolf with silver-streaked fur and pale, almost colorless eyes. He watched our approach with predatory intelligence, dismissing his guards with a mental command that even I could sense. "The prophecy, child," his thoughts reached me, cold and invasive, finally in her true form, impressive, if small. Ronan positioned himself slightly in front of me, a protective gesture that nonetheless acknowledged my ability to fight my own battles. "This ends tonight, Kieran." Ronan's mental voice resonated with authority. "Take your pack and leave our territory." Kieran's mental laugh was chilling. "Why would I leave when what I've sought for years stands before me?" His pale gaze fixed on me. "You've tasted shifting now, felt its power. Imagine what you could become with a stronger alpha, one who embraces power rather than restraining it." "I've seen all I need to see," I projected, the mental communication becoming easier with practice. "I've made my choice." Rage flashed in Kieran's pale eyes. "Then you choose destruction. The prophecy will be fulfilled the hard way." He lunged without warning, his massive form targeting not Ronan but me. I dodged with newly acquired grace, feeling Ronan's surge of protective fury as he intercepted Kieran's second attack. The two alphas collided with bone-jarring force, teeth and claws seeking vulnerable points as they fought with the full power of their positions. I circled, looking for an opening to help without interfering in what had clearly become a dominance battle. Kieran fought with brutal efficiency, his larger size giving him advantage in direct confrontation. But Ronan moved with the fluid grace of a fighter who relied on skill rather than brute strength, evading the worst of Kieran's attacks while inflicting strategic wounds of his own. Blood stained the snow beneath them as the battle continued, neither gaining decisive advantage. Around us, the larger conflict had slowed, both packs sensing that the real battle was between their alphas. Then Kieran feinted, drawing Ronan into an exposed position before launching a devastating attack at his throat. I moved without thinking, throwing myself between them just as Kieran's jaws closed where Ronan's throat had been. Pain exploded along my flank as Kieran's teeth grazed my side. The injury wasn't severe, but the shock of it triggered something unexpected. A surge of power unlike anything I'd felt before, neither human nor wolf, but something entirely unique. Light erupted from within me, bathing the clearing in brilliant blue radiance. Both Kieran and Ronan were thrown backward by an invisible force, landing yards apart. I stood between them, my form shifting not to human or wolf, but something between, upright yet furred, hands capable of grasping yet tipped with claws, face human in structure, yet with the heightened senses of the wolf. The fighting around us stopped completely, all eyes drawn to the unprecedented transformation. Even Kieran seemed shocked into stillness, his pale eyes wide with something approaching fear. "Enough," I said, my voice carrying the dual harmonics of both human speech and wolf communication. "This ends now." Kieran recovered quickly, shifting to human form to address me. "The prophecy," he breathed. "The bridge between worlds, not metaphor, but literal." His expression hardened. "All the more reason you cannot be allowed to remain free. Such power must be controlled." "Power isn't meant to be controlled," I replied, the strange dual voice carrying easily across the now silent clearing. "It's meant to be balanced." I turned to where Ronan had shifted back to human form, his expression one of awe and pride. Balance between tradition and progress. I looked back at Kieran. "Between the old ways and the new." "Pretty words," Kieran sneered, "but meaningless. Power is power. Either you wield it, or it's wielded against you." "No," I said firmly. "That thinking is what's destroying shifter kind. The prophecy wasn't about choosing between packs. It was about healing the divide between them, between all of us." I raised my hands, still glowing with that strange blue light. "I stand between worlds, human and shifter. I see the value in both, the strength in both." The light intensified, spreading outward in a gentle wave. "This is the true meaning of the prophecy." As the light touched each shifter, Blackcrest and Redclaw alike, I felt their emotions, their fears, their hopes. And more importantly, they felt each other's. For the first time in generations, the artificial barriers between packs thinned, allowing true understanding to flow. Kieran alone resisted, backing away from the advancing light. "This changes nothing," he snarled. "Power is still power. Territory is still territory." "You're right," I acknowledged. "Those things remain. But how we approach them can change. We can continue fighting until we destroy ourselves, or we can find a new way forward. Together." The light reached him despite his resistance, enveloping him in its gentle glow. For a moment, just a moment, I glimpsed the wounded child beneath the tyrannical alpha, the boy who had learned that strength was the only protection against a cruel world. When the light finally faded, I stood fully human once more. Exhausted, but filled with a profound sense of accomplishment. Ronan came to my side, supporting me as my legs threatened to give way. "The bridge between worlds," he said softly, "just as the prophecy foretold." Kieran stood silent for a long moment, the experience having visibly shaken him. Finally, he straightened, his natural arrogance reasserting itself, though tempered with something new, respect, however grudging. "This isn't over," he said, but the deadly threat had left his voice. "The packs remain separate. For now," Ronan agreed, "but perhaps not always. Not if we choose a different path." Kieran signaled to his followers, who had already begun tending their wounded. "We withdraw," he announced. "The challenge is suspended." His pale eyes met mine one last time. "We will be watching your progress, Bridgewalker. Prove the prophecy true." As the Red Claw retreated into the forest, the Black Crest erupted in relieved celebration. Daniel approached, his weathered face alight with pride and wonder. "In all my years," he said, embracing me fiercely, "I never thought I'd live to see the prophecy fulfilled, my daughter, the bridge between worlds." "Not fulfilled," I corrected gently. "Just beginning. What happened tonight was just the first step on a much longer path." Later, as dawn broke over the mountains, Ronan and I stood once more at the cliffs overlooking the valley. The first golden light illuminated a world transformed, not physically, but energetically. The prospect of peace, however fragile, had lightened a burden carried for generations. "What happens now?" I asked, leaning into Ronan's solid warmth. His arm tightened around me. "Now we build. On what began tonight. On the bridge you've created." He turned me to face him, his amber eyes serious. "But first, there's another choice to be made. One just for you." I knew what he meant. Despite everything that had happened, despite the role thrust upon me by prophecy and circumstance, one decision remained entirely personal: whether to fully embrace the soul claim between us, to become not just part of the pack, but Ronan's true mate. Looking up at him, this man who had waited for me across years and worlds, who had respected my choices even when they ran counter to his deepest desires, I found the answer came easily. "I choose you," I said simply. "I choose us." The joy that bloomed across his features was worth every hardship of the past days. He cupped my face in his hands with exquisite tenderness. "My Charlotte," he whispered. "My soul's match. Finally home." As his lips met mine, I felt the final pieces of myself sliding into place. Not human, not wolf, but something uniquely both. The pendant at my throat warmed, its ancient symbols glowing briefly with the same blue light that had manifested during the battle. The prophecy had spoken of one who stood between worlds, who would either heal the ancient wound or deepen it beyond repair. Tonight had been just the beginning of that healing, a process that would likely take years, perhaps generations. But with Ronan beside me, with my father's wisdom, and my mother's legacy to guide me, I finally understood my purpose. I was the bridge, between human and shifter, between tradition and progress, between the world I had left and the one I had found. And bridges, by their very nature, don't just connect places. They allow for movement, for exchange, for growth in both directions. As we walked back toward the village, toward our future together, I cast one last glance at the mountains that had once seemed a barrier, but now represented possibility. Somewhere beyond them, Kieran and his pack were reassessing generations of beliefs. Somewhere within them, my own pack was celebrating not just victory, but the promise of a new beginning. And here, between those worlds, I had found my place at last. Home.